Jack Reeves works 3 jobs to give his daughter Sarah the life she deserves. Their tiny apartment isn't much, but it's filled with love and laughter. One rainy evening, Jack finds a golden retriever puppy shivering in an alley. He brings it home, and Sarah's eyes light up with joy for the first time since her mother left. But this isn't just any lost puppy. It belongs to Victoria Chase, the billionaire CEO of Chase Industries, who's grown tired of her lonely life at the top. When Victoria discovers who rescued her beloved pet, she sees something money can't buy, a genuine heart of gold. Could this chance encounter between 2 different worlds lead to something more than just returning a lost puppy? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The letter sat in Jack's bedside drawer, creased from the countless times he'd unfolded and reread it, searching for answers that weren't there. "I can't do this anymore," Rachel had written. "The constant struggle, the endless bills. You and Sarah deserve better." 3 years later, those words still burned. But Jack had learned to live with the ache. Dawn crept through the threadbare curtains of their 3rd-floor walk-up in Queens. Jack's alarm hadn't gone off yet. It never needed to. 15 years of early shifts had trained his body better than any clock. He moved quietly through their 2-bedroom apartment, careful not to wake Sarah. At 11, she was old enough to get herself ready for school, but he still liked to prepare her breakfast before heading to his morning shift at Annie's diner. The kitchen was small but spotless. Jack took pride in keeping their home clean and organized, even if the cabinets were scratched and the linoleum was peeling at the corners. He packed Sarah's lunch, peanut butter and banana sandwich, just like his mom used to make for him, and left a note next to the cereal bowl he'd set out. "Have a great day, kiddo. Don't forget your science project. Love, Dad." His maintenance uniform for the afternoon job at Riverside Apartments hung pressed and ready. The security guard badge for his evening shift at the medical center was polished and waiting in his jacket pocket. 3 jobs, 3 different versions of himself, all to keep their little world turning. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door would check on Sarah after school, like she had ever since Rachel left. The elderly widow had become like a grandmother to Sarah, teaching her to make empanadas and telling stories about her own childhood in Puerto Rico. Jack didn't know what he'd do without her. "Buenos dias, Jack," Mrs. Rodriguez called softly from her door as he passed. She was always up early, saying her rosary by the window. "How's our girl?" "Growing too fast," Jack smiled. "She's already talking about college." "Ay, mi cielo. That one's got big dreams just like her papa." Jack's dreams had gotten smaller over the years, more practical. Keep Sarah fed, keep the rent paid, keep moving forward. But watching his daughter's eyes light up when she talked about becoming a veterinarian, that was enough to make him believe in bigger things again. The morning air was crisp with early autumn. Jack walked the 15 blocks to Annie's, using the time to plan. Sarah's birthday was coming up. He'd been putting aside a little from each paycheck, hoping to get her the art supplies she'd been eyeing at the craft store. The good ones, not the cheap sets that dried up after a few uses. Annie's diner was already humming when he arrived. The morning regulars, mostly factory workers and nurses coming off night shift, liked their coffee ready before the sun was fully up. Jack tied on his apron, nodding to Wei in the kitchen as the chef flipped pancakes with practiced precision. "You look tired, man," Wei said, sliding a plate of eggs toward the service window. "Sarah keeping you up with her science experiments again?" "Nah, just the usual juggling act." Jack filled coffee cups with automatic efficiency, greeting customers by name. Most had been coming here since before Rachel left, had watched Sarah grow up in the vinyl booths, coloring on placemats, while Jack worked double shifts. The morning crowd thinned around 10, giving Jack a chance to catch his breath. He was wiping down tables when his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Made it. To school on time. Mrs. R's empanadas were awesome. Love you, Dad." Simple words, but they lifted the weight of exhaustion from his shoulders. Every sacrifice, every long day, every missed chance at his own happiness, it was all worth it for messages like this. For knowing that despite everything, Sarah was growing up feeling loved and secure. The letter in his drawer might have been about what they deserved, but Jack had learned that better wasn't about money or things. It was about being there every day, in all the small ways that added up to a life. Rachel had chosen to walk away from the struggle. Jack had chosen to embrace it, to find dignity in the work and joy in the simple moments with his daughter. As he prepared for the lunch rush, Jack couldn't know that his carefully balanced world was about to change, that a rain-soaked evening and a lost puppy would open the door to possibilities he'd stopped letting himself imagine. For now, he was just a father doing his best, holding his small family together with determination, love, and the quiet strength that comes from putting someone else's happiness before your own. The diamond-studded collar lay empty on Victoria Chase's desk, catching the morning light that streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office. 68 stories above Manhattan, the city spread out like a glittering chessboard. A game she'd mastered long ago, yet somehow still felt like she was losing. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Ms. Chase." Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Henderson is particularly eager to discuss the Asian market expansion." Victoria touched the collar's soft leather, remembering how Max had squirmed when she'd first put it on him. "The puppy needs something practical," the breeder had insisted. But Victoria Chase didn't do practical, not when it came to the things she loved. "Tell them I'll be there shortly," she replied, her voice carrying the precise mix of authority and disinterest that had become her trademark. At 38, she was the youngest CEO in Chase Industries' history, and the loneliest. The boardroom was already full when she arrived. 12 men and 2 women, all chosen for their ruthless efficiency, all watching her with that familiar mixture of respect and wariness. Victoria had learned early that fear was more reliable than friendship in this world. "The Q3 projections are promising," Henderson droned, clicking through his presentation. "Our market share in emerging economies has increased by—" Victoria's thoughts drifted to Max. 3 days since he disappeared during his evening walk with the dog walker. 3 days of empty rooms and silence in her Upper East Side townhouse. The staff had been terminated, of course. Incompetence wasn't tolerated in Victoria Chase's world, but firing people couldn't fill the void left by 4 pounds of golden fur and unconditional love. "Miss Chase, your thoughts on the proposal?" She refocused, years of practice, allowing her to pick up the thread of conversation she'd only half heard. "The numbers are solid, but we're missing an opportunity in sustainable energy. Have the team revised the projections with a 30% shift toward green technology?" Heads nodded, pens scratched on notepads. No one questioned her instincts, not anymore, not after she'd doubled the company's value in 5 years. Later, alone in her office, Victoria scrolled through photos on her phone. Max on his first day home, barely bigger than her hand. Max sleeping in his custom-made bed, which he'd ignored in favor of curling up on her lap while she worked late. Max racing through Central Park, pure joy in every movement. "Your father would be appalled," her mother had said when Victoria adopted him. "A Chase, caring for an animal? We have staff for that sort of thing." But that was exactly why Victoria had done it herself. Every walk, every feeding, every middle-of-the-night trip to the pet ER when he'd eaten something he shouldn't. Max was the one thing in her life that wasn't managed, delegated, or arranged by others. The intercom buzzed again. "The private investigators are here with their report." "Send them in." 2 men in expensive suits entered, carrying tablets and apologetic expressions. Victoria already knew what they would say. No sign of Max, despite the reward money that could buy a small house. "We've expanded the search radius," the senior investigator explained. "Posted flyers in every veterinary clinic and shelter in the metropolitan area. Given the value of the collar alone—" "The collar doesn't matter," Victoria cut him off. "Find my dog." After they left, She stood at the window, watching the city shift from day to evening. Lights flickered on in countless windows, each one representing a life, a story, a world completely different from her own. Somewhere out there, Max was lost and probably scared. He'd never spent a night outside, never gone hungry, never had to fend for himself. Unlike Victoria, she'd learned those lessons early, climbing the corporate ladder in her father's company. Charles Chase hadn't believed in nepotism, at least not the kind that made things easier for his daughter. Every mistake had been public, every success scrutinized for signs of unfair advantage. By the time she took over as CEO, no one could question that she'd earned it. But what had she really earned? A life scheduled in 15-minute increments, relationships evaluated for their strategic value, a home filled with priceless art and empty spaces where family photos should be. Her phone lit up with another email about the Asian expansion. Victoria set it aside, picked up the collar instead. Its diamonds sparkled like tears in the fading light. "Where are you, little one?" she whispered, allowing herself this moment of vulnerability only because she was alone. "What am I supposed to do without you?" She didn't know then that Max had already found exactly where he needed to be, that sometimes losing something precious is the first step to finding something even more valuable, that even the most carefully constructed walls can be breached by a wagging tail and an open heart. The rain had started during Jack's evening security shift, turning the medical center's parking lot into a maze of puddles and reflected streetlights. By the time he headed home, the storm had settled into a steady drizzle that seemed to wash away what little color remained in the late-night city. He'd taken the longer route home, past the shuttered storefronts and closed delis. The extra 15 minutes of walking helped clear his head, let him shed the weight of his 3 jobs before seeing Sarah. She always knew when he was tired, worried too much for an 11-year-old. The whimper was so soft, he almost missed it. Jack paused, tilting his head to listen. There it was again, a sound somewhere between fear and hope, coming from the narrow alley between a laundromat and a Chinese restaurant. His security training made him cautious, but something about that cry pulled at him. "Hello?" he called softly, using his phone's flashlight to pierce the darkness. "Anyone there?" A cardboard box shifted slightly, and 2 brown eyes peered out from beneath a soggy newspaper. The golden retriever puppy couldn't have been more than a few months old, its expensive-looking coat matted with rain and city grime. "Hey there, little guy," Jack said, crouching down slowly. "You lost?" The puppy's tail made a tentative wag, but it stayed put, shivering. Jack noticed it wasn't wearing a collar, though its well-groomed appearance suggested it had a home somewhere. "Can't leave you out here, can I?" He wasn't really asking the puppy. He was asking his budget, his landlord's no-pet policy, his carefully balanced life. But as he scooped up the trembling bundle of fur, those concerns seemed less important than doing what was right. The puppy snuggled against his chest, seeking warmth. Jack tucked it inside his jacket, feeling its rapid heartbeat gradually slow as they walked home. Sarah was supposed to be asleep. It was nearly midnight, but light spilled from under her door. She'd been waiting up again, probably drawing in her sketchbook. The door creaked open before he could even reach for the handle. "Dad, you're late." I was worried. She stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening at the movement under his jacket. "What's that?" Jack carefully extracted the puppy, now somewhat drier, but still desperate for attention. "Found this little one in an alley, just for tonight, until we can—" Sarah's gasp of delight cut him off. The puppy, sensing a kindred spirit, squirmed toward her. Oh my God, it's so cute. Can we keep it? Please, Dad, please." "Sarah, you know the building doesn't allow—" "Mrs. Rodriguez has a cat," Sarah countered, already cradling the puppy like it was the most precious thing she'd ever held. "And Mr. Kim on the first floor has 2 birds. Please, I'll help take care of it, I promise. I'll walk it and feed it and—" The puppy chose that moment to lick Sarah's chin, drawing out a giggle that made Jack's heart twist. He hadn't heard that sound since before Rachel left. "Let's get it cleaned up first," he said, knowing he was already losing this battle. Then we'll figure things out." Sarah's face lit up with the special smile she reserved for when hope was becoming reality. She dashed to the bathroom, returning with their least threadbare towel. Together, they dried the puppy, discovering its coat was a beautiful shade of gold under the dirt. "It's a boy," Sarah announced, her recent animal shelter volunteering making her an expert. "And look how soft his fur is under all the mess. He must belong to someone rich." Jack nodded, watching as she gently worked out the tangles with their only comb. "We'll check for missing dog posters tomorrow, if someone's looking for him. But tonight he's ours, right?" Sarah hugged the puppy close. "Just for tonight?" The puppy had already made himself at home, investigating their small living room with growing confidence. He found Sarah's stuffed elephant, a survivor from her toddler days, and proudly carried it to her, tail wagging. Sarah reached for her sketchbook and began drawing, her hand moving quickly to capture the scene. The puppy watched her work, head tilted curiously. Jack noticed his daughter adding little details, the way the puppy's ears perked up, the slight curl of his tail, the bright intelligence in his eyes. "He needs a name," Sarah said, not looking up from her drawing. "Just for tonight." Jack smiled, knowing just for tonight was quickly becoming a much longer commitment. "What did you have in mind?" "How about Hope?" She held up the finished sketch, a remarkably good likeness of the puppy, surrounded by hearts and stars. "Because that's what it feels like, right? Like Hope just walked in our door." Looking at his daughter's shining eyes, at the way the puppy had already claimed a spot next to her on the couch, Jack couldn't argue. Sometimes hope did come in unexpected packages, bringing light to places that had been dark for too long. "Hope, it is," he said softly, "for tonight." But as he watched Sarah fall asleep on the couch, the puppy curled protectively against her side, Jack knew tonight was just the beginning of something that would change their lives forever. He just didn't know how much. Victoria's PR team had outdone themselves. By morning, every lamppost and storefront in Manhattan blazed with Max's face, professional photos that captured his playful spirit and distinctive golden coat. The reward offered was more than most. People made in a year $50,000 for the safe return of Max Chase. "The response has been overwhelming," her media director reported, tablet in hand. "Local news stations want exclusive interviews. The Post is calling it the Great Puppy Hunt. Social media is—" "I don't care about the media narrative," Victoria interrupted, staring out her office window. "I care about results." The streets below were a grid of possibility. Every corner, every alley, every neighborhood might be hiding her beloved pet. The thought of Max out there alone, scared, possibly hurt. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, steadying herself. "Double the reward," she said, "and expand the search radius to include Queens and Brooklyn." Across the city, Jack stared at one of the posters during his morning walk to Annie's diner. The puppy in the photo was unmistakable, cleaner, better groomed, but definitely the same one currently curled up on Sarah's bed at home. "Max," he murmured, reading the name. His heart sank as he took in the details. Beloved pet of Victoria Chase, CEO of Chase Industries, missing from Upper East Side townhouse, substantial reward offered. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Hope learned to sit. Can we get him? A collar? Pretty please?" Jack's thumb traced the edge of his phone, guilt and uncertainty warring in his chest. They'd had the puppy, Max, for less than 24 hours, but already he could see the change in Sarah. She'd woken up early to feed him, used her own money to buy dog food from the corner store, and couldn't stop talking about all the tricks. She would teach him. The morning rush at Annie's was a blur of coffee orders and scrambled eggs, but Jack's mind kept returning to the poster. We'd noticed his distraction in the kitchen. "You okay, man? You seem off today." Jack nearly dropped a plate of pancakes. "Yeah, just got some things on my mind." During his break, he searched for Victoria Chase online. The results were intimidating. Forbes covers, business awards, society photos of a striking woman with impossible poise. The kind of person who could offer a $50,000 reward without blinking. The kind of person who could give Max everything he deserved. Another text from Sarah lit up his phone. Made a new drawing of Hope. Mrs. Rodriguez says he's the goodest boy ever. The photo attachment showed Max, Hope, playing with Sarah's old stuffed animals, joy radiating from every pencil stroke. His daughter's artistic talent shone through in the details, the sparkle in the puppy's eyes, the happy curve of his tail, the way his paw reached out, as if inviting the viewer to play. Jack's finger hovered over the contact number on the reward poster. It would be the right thing to do. The responsible thing. The money could help with Sarah's college fund. Maybe. Even. The lunch rush began before he could finish the thought. As he served plates and refilled coffee cups, Jack noticed something. Every customer seemed to be talking about the missing puppy. The reward amount had caught everyone's attention. Can you imagine? One regular said. 50 grand for a dog? Must be nice to have that kind of money to throw around. Did you see who lost it? Another replied. Victoria Chase. My sister's friend works in her company. Says she's a real piece of work, cold as ice. Jack tried not to listen, but the conversations followed him throughout his shift. By the time he headed to his maintenance job at Riverside, apartments, the posters seemed to be everywhere. Max's face multiplied across the city like an accusation. His phone buzzed again, this time a video from Mrs. Rodriguez. Sarah was in their small living room, teaching Max Hope to shake hands. The puppy's tail wagged so hard, his whole body wiggled, and Sarah's laughter filled the background. Your girl has such a gift, Mrs. Rodriguez had written. Haven't seen her this happy in years. Jack tucked his phone away, the weight of decision pressing down on him. He had always taught Sarah about honesty, about doing the right thing, no matter how hard it might be. But he also taught her about love, about responsibility to those who needed you. The puppy needed them. Sarah needed the puppy. And somewhere in a townhouse on the Upper East Side, Victoria Chase had enough money to buy 100 puppies. Still, as Jack changed into his maintenance uniform, he couldn't shake the image from the reward poster, not of Max, but of the phone number below it. The right thing to do was clear. Why, then, did it feel so impossible? The morning rush had ended at Annie's diner when the bell above the door chimed. Jack looked up from wiping down the counter to see a woman in a charcoal-grey business suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from always being the most powerful person in any room. Coffee, black, she said, sliding onto a stool without looking up from her phone. And whatever passes for breakfast here. Jack placed a menu in front of her, noting the faint circles under her eyes that expensive makeup couldn't quite hide. Our egg white omelette is pretty popular, he offered. Way makes it with fresh herbs. She glanced up, and for a moment their eyes met. Jack felt an unexpected jolt of recognition. He'd seen those eyes before, in the puppy currently curled up on Sarah's bed. They had the same hint of loneliness beneath a carefully maintained facade. Fine, Victoria Chase said, because, of course, it was her. Jack's heart hammered as he wrote down the order, but she showed no sign of recognizing him. Why would she? He was just another server in just another diner. Rough morning? He asked, pouring her coffee. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Victoria's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her phone. My dog is missing, she said after a pause. You've probably seen the posters. Yeah, hard to miss them. Jack busied himself with arranging sugar packets. Sounds like you really love him. He's the only one who... She stopped, shook her head. Yes, I do. The coffee receipt printer chose that moment to jam, spitting out a crumpled paper with half-printed text. Jack fumbled with it, hyper-aware of Victoria's presence. I don't usually come to places like this, she said, taking a sip of coffee. Her eyebrows raised slightly. This is surprisingly good. Colombian beans, fresh ground every morning. Jack managed a smile. Some things you can't fake with expensive packaging. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Surprise, maybe even amusement. Are you suggesting my usual coffee shop is overrated? Wouldn't know, Jack shrugged. Places with $20 lattes aren't really in my budget. Instead of taking offense, Victoria actually smiled. It transformed her face, softening the sharp edges of power and privilege. Neither was Max, technically. The breeder said he was the runt of the litter, probably wouldn't meet show standards, but the moment I saw him, love doesn't care about standards, Jack said quietly, thinking of Sarah's face when she first held the puppy. No, Victoria. Agreed, it doesn't. The diner's door chimed again. Jack's heart stopped as Sarah burst in, backpack bouncing, a familiar golden bundle of fur trotting at her heels. "Dad, Hope learned a new trick and I had to—" She froze, seeing Victoria. The puppy, sensing something in the air, sat perfectly still. Time seemed to stretch, like pulled taffy. Jack watched emotions flash across Victoria's face. Confusion, recognition, disbelief. Her coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Max, the puppy's ears perked up at his original name. His tail began to wag, slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. "I can explain," Jack started, but Victoria was already moving, dropping to her knees as Max bounded toward her. Sarah pressed against Jack's side, her small hand gripping his apron. "Dad?" she whispered. Is she—" Victoria looked up from Max's excited greeting, tears streaking her perfect makeup. Her eyes met Jack's, and this time there was no mistaking the recognition or the mix of joy and anger that followed it. "You had him," she said. "All this time, while I was searching, while I was worried sick, you had him. We found him in an alley," Sarah burst out. "He was cold and scared and—" "Sarah," Jack cut her off gently. "Why don't you take Hope, Max, outside for a minute? I need to talk to Ms. Chase." "But Dad, please, honey." Sarah reluctantly led the puppy out, glancing back with worried eyes. Through the window, Jack could see her sitting on the bench, outside hugging Max close. "I was going to call," he said, turning back to Victoria. "I saw the posters yesterday. I needed time to figure out how to tell my daughter." Victoria stood, brushing off her expensive suit. Her business mask had slipped back into place, but her hands were shaking slightly. "Time? While I had every private investigator in the city searching, while I couldn't sleep, imagining him hurt or worse." She pulled out her phone. "I should call the police." "You could," Jack acknowledged. "Or you could look out that window and see what Max has meant to a little girl who lost her mother 3 years ago, who finally started smiling again because a scared puppy needed her as much as she needed him." Victoria's finger hovered over her phone. Through the glass, they could both see Sarah demonstrating Max's new trick, a somewhat wobbly roll-over that made the puppy look more like a furry slinky. 2 days, Victoria said finally, her voice tight. "You had him for 2 days, and already she loves him. Love doesn't take long when it's real." Jack met her gaze steadily. "You of all people should know that." The tension in the diner stretched, like a wire about to snap. Then Way's voice cut through from the kitchen. "Order up, egg white omelette with fresh herbs." Victoria's phone disappeared into her pocket. She sat back down at the counter, her movements precise and controlled. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start with the alley." Victoria sat in Annie's diner, long after the breakfast crowd had cleared, her untouched omelette growing cold. She watched through the window as Sarah played with Max on the sidewalk, the puppy's favorite chew toy, a worn blue rubber bone, moving between them in an endless game of fetch. "She saved up her allowance to buy him that toy," Jack said quietly, refilling Victoria's coffee. $4.98. Wouldn't let me help pay for it. "The toy collection at my house takes up an entire closet," Victoria replied. "Designer brands, custom-made. He always preferred the simplest ones." Jack nodded, understanding flowing between them. "Kids are like that too. Sarah's favorite Christmas present last year was a sketchbook I got on clearance. She draws everything, everyone." He hesitated. "She's been drawing Max non-stop since we found him." Victoria's hand tightened around her coffee cup. "You mean since you kept him, knowing he belonged to someone else?" "I saw the posters yesterday," Jack defended. And I was struggling with what to do. You have to understand. Understand what? That you thought because I'm wealthy, because I can offer a reward, that somehow Max means less to me? The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. No, Jack said softly, that sometimes doing the right thing isn't as simple as it seems. Outside, Sarah had sat down on the sidewalk and Max was curled in her lap, his head resting contentedly on her knee. The sight made something twist in Victoria's chest. I haven't slept, she said, more to herself than to Jack. Not since he disappeared. My entire house feels empty. Do you know what that's like? Jack was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, he finally replied. I do. The night after Rachel left, Sarah cried herself to sleep. The apartment felt like all the air had been sucked out. Still does sometimes. Victoria looked at him then, really looked. The lines around his eyes spoke of long hours and longer worries. His hands, rough from manual labor, still moved with a gentle grace as he wiped down the counter. There was something honest about him that made her usual defenses feel unnecessary. Tell me about finding him, she said. So Jack did. He described the rainy night, the whimper in the alley, the way Max had trusted him immediately, how Sarah's face had lit up when she saw the puppy, the impromptu bath in their tiny bathroom, the shared pizza dinner on the floor, the way Max had slept curled against Sarah's side. She named him Hope, Jack finished, said that's what it felt like when he came into our lives. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum. I need to take him home. I know. He has doctors, trainers, a special diet. I know. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Reeves. Jack, he corrected gently, and I'm not trying to negotiate. I'm just asking you to look at what's happening out there before you make your decision. Through the window, they watched as Sarah showed Max a new trick she'd been practicing. The puppy sat perfectly still, watching her with complete devotion as she held a treat above his head. Stay, Sarah commanded softly. Stay. Good boy. Max's tail wagged furiously as he maintained his position, eyes never leaving Sarah's face. When she finally gave him the treat, he licked her hand and promptly rolled over for a belly rub. She's good with him, Victoria admitted. She's good with all animals. Volunteers at the shelter every weekend. Wants to be a vet when she grows. Up. Pride crept into Jack's voice. Been saving her allowance for college since she was 8. Victoria's phone buzzed. Another email about the Asian expansion. Another crisis needing her attention. She ignored it. I have a meeting in 30 minutes, she said instead. The board is expecting a full presentation on our quarterly projections. Jack nodded, already reaching for her untouched plate. Of course. I'll tell Sarah I'm not finished. Victoria pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. This is my personal number, not my office, not my assistant. Me. She placed it on the counter between them. Call me this evening. We need to figure this out. Figure what out? Victoria looked again at Sarah and Max, at the undeniable bond that had formed between them in just 2 days. At the way Max kept checking on Sarah even while playing, protective and loving all at once. A solution, she said finally, one that doesn't break anyone's heart. She walked to the door, designer heels clicking against the worn floor. At the threshold, she paused. Jack? Yes? Thank you. For taking care of him, for... She gestured vaguely at the diner, the sidewalk, the simple world that had somehow become complicated. For being someone who would stop in an alley on a rainy night to help a lost puppy. Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and the possibility of something neither of them had expected to find in a humble diner on an ordinary morning. Jack stared at the calendar app on his phone, trying to make sense of Victoria's proposal. The shared custody schedule she'd drafted was color-coded and precise. Blue blocks for weekdays with her, yellow for weekends with Sarah, green for special occasions they'd need to discuss. It's not traditional, Victoria admitted. They sat in her Upper East Side townhouse, the elegance of the space making Jack intensely aware of his worn jeans and work boots. But then again, nothing about this situation is. Sarah sat cross-legged on the imported rug, Max stretched out beside her. The puppy seemed perfectly at home in both worlds now, switching between them as easily as changing toys. "And you're sure about this?" Jack asked. "Sharing him, I mean. It's a big commitment." Victoria smiled slightly. "I run a multinational corporation, Jack. I think I can handle a shared puppy custody arrangement," but they both knew it was more than that. The schedule meant regular interactions, blending of their very different lives, conversations that couldn't be avoided. "What about holidays?" Sarah piped up. She'd been quiet since they arrived, overwhelmed by the townhouse's grandeur. "Like Christmas?" "Well," Victoria set down her tablet, considering. "I usually spend Christmas alone going over quarterly reports. But perhaps," she glanced at Jack, something uncertain in her expression, "perhaps we could discuss alternating years." Jack watched his daughter's face light up at the word years, the promise of a long-term arrangement, of keeping Max in their lives. "We could do that, though our Christmas is probably pretty different from what you're used to." "Oh?" Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Dad makes hot chocolate from scratch," Sarah explained, warming to the subject. "And we watch old movies and make paper chains for the tree. Sometimes Mrs. Rodriguez brings over her special tamales." Something flickered in Victoria's eyes, longing maybe for the kind of simple celebration she'd never had. "That sounds nice." Max chose that moment to trot over to Victoria, placing his blue rubber bone in her lap. She picked it up automatically, then hesitated, looking at the worn toy with its teeth marks and slightly ragged edges. "He wants you to throw it," Sarah said. "It's his favorite game." Victoria held the toy awkwardly. "I usually have someone exercise him in the private dog park. Here." Sarah moved closer, showing her how to play fetch with enthusiasm, but not too much force. "See? He likes it when you get excited with him." Jack watched the unlikely scene, his daughter teaching a CEO how to play with a puppy, the pristine white furniture somehow surviving Max's energetic retrievals, three worlds merging into something new and unexpected. The calendar on his phone glowed with possibilities. Weekends in the park, holiday arrangements, scheduled handoffs that might lead to shared meals or longer conversations. It was complicated, messy, absolutely not what anyone had planned. It was perfect. "I have one condition," he said finally. Victoria tensed slightly. "Which is, no more diamond collars, he's happier with the simple things." Her laugh, when it came, was genuine and unguarded. "Deal, though I reserve the right to spoil him and Sarah in other ways." "Dad," Sarah said suddenly, "can we show Miss Chase my drawings of Max? I brought my sketchbook." Victoria's expression softened. "I'd like that very much. And please, call me Victoria." As Sarah retrieved her backpack, Jack studied the calendar again. Yellow blocks, blue blocks, green blocks, each one a chance to bridge the gap between their worlds, each one a reminder that sometimes the best solutions aren't about choosing one side or the other, but about finding the courage to create something entirely new. "It'll work," Victoria said quietly, reading his expression. "We'll make it work." And looking at Sarah showing her drawings to Victoria, at Max contentedly sprawled between them with his beloved blue bone, at the way the afternoon light made. "Even this formal room feels somehow warmer," Jack believed her. The photo caught them all off guard. Sarah spotted it first, displayed in the window of the small photography shop near their regular meeting spot in Central Park. There they were, Jack laughing at something Victoria had said, Sarah stretched out on the grass with Max, and Victoria herself sitting on the bench with an uncharacteristic smile, her usual corporate armor softened by weekend casual wear. "Look!" Sarah pressed her nose against the glass. "When did they take this?" "Last Saturday, I think," Jack said, recognizing Victoria's cream cashmere sweater and jeans, an outfit that probably cost more than his monthly salary, but somehow looked perfectly at home in the park. The photographer emerged from his shop, beaming, Beautiful family moment. Couldn't resist capturing it. I can take it down if you'd prefer. No, Victoria said, surprising everyone. We'd like to purchase it. All copies. 3 weeks in too. Their shared custody arrangement, and moments like these kept catching Jack off guard. The way Victoria remembered Sarah's favorite ice cream flavor, how she'd started bringing coffee from her expensive shop for Jack during morning handoffs, the genuine interest she showed in Sarah's veterinary ambitions. The light is particularly good, Victoria observed, studying the photo, though I hardly recognize myself. That's because you're actually relaxing for once, Jack teased. Their banter had become easier, more natural. I relax, Victoria protested. Answering emails on your phone doesn't count, Sarah chimed in, making both adults laugh. They spent that afternoon in their usual spot, what the park regulars had come to know as Max's Corner. Victoria had arranged for a blanket and picnic basket to be delivered. It's just sandwiches, she'd said, when Jack started to object to the extravagance, and the autumn sun turned everything golden. Sarah worked on her homework while Max alternated. Between chasing squirrels and napping, Jack noticed Victoria watching them, her expression thoughtful. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, passing her a sandwich. They're worth considerably more than that, she replied automatically, then smiled at their shared joke. I was just thinking, I can't remember the last time I spent a Sunday afternoon doing nothing productive. This is productive, Jack said. Look at Max's fetch skills. Very impressive ROI on our training investment. Victoria's laugh drew looks from passing joggers, not just because it was genuine, but because Victoria Chase, Ice Queen of Wall Street, was sitting on a picnic blanket in jeans, sharing lunch with a diner waiter and his daughter. Dad, Sarah called, can you help me with this math problem? Actually, Victoria said before Jack could respond, math is kind of my thing. May I? They watched as Victoria scooted closer to Sarah, explaining compound interest in terms of Pokemon card. Collecting. Sarah's eyes lit up with understanding, and Jack felt something warm unfurl in his chest. You're good at that, he said later, as they packed up the remains of lunch. Teaching, I mean. I used to help my younger sister with her homework, Victoria said, before everything became about the company. You have a sister? Had. Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. Car accident 12 years ago. Jack wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but settled for quiet understanding. That's why Max means so much to you. Victoria nodded, watching Sarah throw the blue bone for an enthusiastic Max. Claire loved dogs, always wanted one, but our parents... She trailed off. When I saw Max at the breeders, he had the same look in his eyes that Claire used to get. Like he knew life was meant to be an adventure. Sarah has that look, Jack said softly. Yes, Victoria agreed. She does. The sun was setting when they finally gathered their things. The photographer had packaged their photo in a simple frame, capturing forever the moment when 3 separate lives had begun to intertwine. Same time next Sunday? Victoria asked, though they all knew the schedule by heart now. Wouldn't miss it, Jack replied. As they walked Sarah home, Max trotting happily between them, Jack realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about sharing custody of a puppy anymore. It was about sharing parts of themselves they'd kept hidden, about finding connections in the most unexpected places. The framed photo would soon have a place of honor in both homes, in Jack and Sarah's modest apartment and Victoria's elegant townhouse. A reminder that sometimes the best families are the ones we create ourselves. One Sunday afternoon at a time, the tabloid headlines screamed from every newsstand in Manhattan, Chase Industries CEO's secret life exposed. Beneath it, paparazzi photos showed Victoria in the park with Jack and Sarah, Max playing at their feet. The story inside was worse, filled with snide implications and class-based commentary. Sources close to the board express concern over Ms. Chase's recent behavior, Jack read, his coffee growing cold at Annie's counter. The mysterious single father and his daughter have been spotted multiple times with the previously private CEO, raising questions about her judgment and focus. Way peered over his shoulder at the paper. Man, that's rough. You guys are front-page news. It's not news, Jack said quietly. It's invasion. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Emergency board meeting. Need to reschedule park time. I'm sorry. Sarah would be devastated. She'd been planning to show Victoria her science project, a detailed study of Max's behavior patterns that had earned her top marks. Now, instead of celebration, they faced scrutiny. The diner's bell chimed, and Jack looked up to see Henderson, Victoria's board member, sliding onto a stool. The man's expensive suit and dismissive glance around the diner made it clear this wasn't a casual breakfast visit. Mr. Reeves? Henderson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Might we have a word? Jack gestured to the nearly empty diner. I'm working. Yes, that's rather the point. Henderson pulled out an envelope, thick with papers. Chase Industries values its reputation. Ms. Chase's personal choices are creating unnecessary complications. Her personal choices are none of your business. When those choices affect share prices, they become everyone's business. Henderson pushed the envelope forward. Inside, you'll find an extremely generous offer. In exchange, you and your daughter agree to terminate this inappropriate arrangement. Jack stared at the envelope. The amount would probably be life-changing, enough for Sarah's college, maybe even a small house. Everything he'd struggled to provide, wrapped up in crisp legal documents. All it would cost was their dignity, their Sunday afternoons, the joy in Sarah's eyes when she saw Victoria and Max. The way Victoria had started to thaw, to show glimpses of the person behind the CEO mask. Keep your money, Jack said, pushing the envelope back. And tell the board they're wrong about Victoria. She's not distracted. She's finally living. Henderson's face hardened. Don't be foolish, Mr. Reeves. Consider your daughter's future. I am, Jack replied. I'm teaching her that some things matter more than money. After Henderson left, Jack's hands shook as he wiped down the counter. The tabloid stared up at him, its grainy photos making something beautiful look tawdry and suspicious. His phone buzzed again. Sarah sending a photo of Max with her science project display. When is Victoria coming? I want to show her the graphs. Before he could respond, the diner's door opened again. This time it was Victoria, looking more uncertain than he'd ever seen her. The board, she started, then stopped. They're suggesting. I know, Jack said. Henderson was here. Oh, God. Victoria sank onto a stool, her usual poise cracking. Jack, I'm so sorry. I never meant for my world to hurt you or Sarah. Hey! Jack reached across the counter, taking her hand before he could think better of it. We're tougher than they think. Victoria looked down at their joined hands, then back at the tabloid. But your privacy. Sarah's life at school. Sarah's learning that standing up for what matters sometimes means facing criticism. That's not a bad lesson. And you? Victoria's voice was soft. What are you learning? Jack thought about Henderson's envelope, about Sunday afternoons in the park, about the way Victoria's real smile lit up her whole face. I'm learning that some complications are worth it. The tension in Victoria's shoulders eased slightly. The board wants me to focus on the Asian expansion, to stop playing house, as they put it. And what do you want? Before she could answer, Sarah burst into the diner, Max trotting beside her. Her face fell when she saw their expressions. Is it bad? She asked. The kids at school were talking. About the pictures. Victoria straightened, decision settling over her features. It's not bad, Sarah. It's just people who don't understand. Like Tommy Martinez when he said I couldn't play basketball because I'm a girl. Exactly like that, Jack said. And what did you do then? Sarah grinned. Scored 3 baskets and made him eat his words. Well then, Victoria said, producing her tablet, let's show me those behavior graphs. I hear someone got top marks? As Sarah excitedly pulled up her project, Jack watched Victoria's face. The CEO mask had fallen away completely, replaced by genuine interest and affection. No tabloid could capture what was really happening here. The Slow, beautiful transformation of three separate lives into something whole. Max settled at their feet, his favorite blue bone secure in his mouth, unaware that his simple love had sparked such complicated consequences. Or maybe, Jack thought, watching Sarah teach Victoria about canine learning patterns, the dog knew exactly what he was doing all along. The protest sign appeared first at Annie's diner, a simple piece of cardboard held by Way. Stand with Victoria. By afternoon, similar signs had popped up across the city. Coffee shop baristas, doormen, maintenance workers, dog walkers, all. The invisible people who kept Manhattan running had something to say about the board's attempts to control Victoria Chase's personal life. Your coffee shop people started it, Way told Jack during the morning rush. Apparently Victoria's been learning all their names, actually asking about their families. They're saying she's changed, in a good way. Jack watched the news coverage. On the diner's small TV, Victoria stood on the steps of Chase Industries, facing a wall of reporters. But instead of her usual corporate armor, she wore jeans and a sweater. Her park clothes, as Sarah called them. The board's concerns about my personal life are misplaced, she was saying, her voice clear and confident. In the past quarter, our profits have increased by 20%. Our employee satisfaction rates are at an all-time high, and yes, I spend my Sundays in the park with a remarkable family and a dog who reminded me what matters most in life. I fail to see the problem. The diner erupted in cheers. Jack felt pride swell in his chest, remembering the uncertain woman who'd first ordered black coffee at his counter. "Dad!" Sarah burst in, waving a paper. "Look what my class made!" It was a petition, signed by every student in her grade. Let Sarah keep her dog. Below the signatures, her science teacher had added a note about Sarah's improved participation and enthusiasm since starting her behavioral study of Max. Tommy Martinez signed first, Sarah said proudly. Said anyone who thinks dogs don't belong in two houses doesn't understand modern families. Out of the mouths of babes, Jack thought. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Your daughter is trending on social media. Shown, Sarah and Max. Let them play. Someone had posted a video of Sarah and Max in the park, her patient training sessions, and his joyful responses. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. This is what real love looks like. Money can't buy this kind of bond. Board members need to get a life. But it was the response from Victoria's employees that truly turned the tide. Stories began emerging about how she'd changed in recent months. The secretary, who was surprised to be asked about her son's college applications, the janitor who found her playing fetch with Max in her office after hours, the junior executives who noticed she actually listened during meetings now, instead of just waiting to speak. The woman takes her dog to a public park instead of using a private service, Way read from his phone. She laughs with her friends instead of networking. She helps a kid with science homework. Oh, the horror! The sarcasm in his voice reflected the general public sentiment. By lunchtime, Let Victoria Live was trending alongside Sarah and Max. The best response, though, came from Mrs. Rodriguez. The elderly widow marched straight into the Chase Industries lobby, past security, who didn't dare stop a determined abuela, and delivered her famous empanadas to the board meeting. "You think you can tell a family not to be a family?" she reportedly announced. "In my day, we knew better than to get between a child and her dog, or between people whose hearts are learning to trust again." Jack got the story second-hand from Victoria, who called him barely containing her laughter. "Henderson actually tried to argue with her," Victoria said. "She told him his tie was as ugly as his attitude and force-fed him an empanada." "That's Mrs. Rodriguez for you," Jack grinned. "How did the board take it?" "They're realizing this battle isn't worth the PR nightmare. Plus, the empanadas were really good." Later that evening, their usual park corner was more crowded than usual. Well-wishers kept stopping by, some with signs, others just wanting to see the family that had sparked such a movement. I don't understand, Sarah said, watching another group of supporters walk past. We're just people who love a dog. Victoria, who had escaped the board meeting to join them, smiled. Sometimes that's all it takes. One genuine thing in a world of pretense. Max, unconcerned with his role in corporate politics, continued fetching his blue bone. Each time he returned it, he made sure to visit each of them, a pattern Sarah had documented in her project as family recognition behavior. Speaking of genuine, Jack said, Mrs. Rodriguez wants to know if you're coming to Sunday dinner this week. She's teaching Sarah to make empanadas. Victoria looked at the setting sun, at the protest signs, at Sarah and Max playing on the grass, at all the complications that had somehow made her life simpler. Try and stop me, she said softly. Try and stop me. Victoria's resignation letter sat unopened on her desk, the Chase Industries letterhead gleaming under her office lights. She'd spent all night writing it, erasing, rewriting, trying to find words to explain how a lost puppy had helped her find herself. The board's ultimatum had come that morning. End the disruptive situation with the Reeves family, or step down as CEO. They'd couched it in corporate language about focus and optics, but the message was clear. Choose your world. Her phone lit. Up with a text from Sarah. Max mastered a new trick. Can't wait to show you on Sunday. Attached was a photo of the puppy with a proudly wagging tail, sitting next to Sarah's science project ribbons. Victoria's finger traced the edge of the envelope. 20 years she'd spent climbing Chase Industries' corporate ladder. 20 years of missed holidays, cancelled plans, relationships sacrificed on the altar of success. The company had been her inheritance, her identity, her shield against the messy complexity of real connections. Then a rain-soaked puppy had wandered into a Queen's alley and everything changed. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Jack stood there, still in his diner uniform, concern etched on his face. Sarah's with Mrs. Rodriguez, he said before she could ask. Way told me about the board meeting. Victoria gestured to the chair across from her desk. They've made their position clear. So I'm here to make mine clear, Jack said, but remained standing. Step back. What? From us, from the arrangement. Keep your company, it's your family legacy. Victoria looked at him sharply. Is that what you think? That Chase Industries is my family legacy? She stood, walking to the wall of photographs chronicling company history. Her father's stern face looked down from several frames, alongside images of ribbon cuttings and corporate acquisitions. My father built this company believing that legacy was about power, about winning. She touched one photo, herself at 18, receiving a business award, her smile not reaching her eyes. I spent 20 years trying to prove I was worthy of that legacy. And now? Victoria turned back to Jack. Now I realize that legacy isn't about what you build. It's about what you choose. She picked up her phone, showing him Sarah's message. This is legacy, teaching a child that love doesn't have to look like everyone else expects. Showing her that even successful women can learn to play fetch in the park, being part of something real, even if it's complicated. Victoria, Jack's voice was gentle, we never meant to cost you your company. You didn't. She smiled, really smiled, the way she only had since meeting them. You and Sarah, and yes, Max, you helped me understand what the company should be. She pressed a button on her intercom. Send in the board, please. Jack started to leave, but she caught his hand. Stay. They should see exactly what I'm choosing. The board members filed in, expressions ranging from concerned to contemptuous. Henderson took one look at Jack and sneered. Well, Ms. Chase, have you made your decision? Victoria lifted her resignation letter. Yes, but not the one you're expecting. She tore the envelope in half. Chase Industries was built on the idea that success means sacrifice. That personal happiness is somehow unprofessional. She squared her shoulders. I reject that premise. This company will thrive not because we sacrifice our humanity, but because we embrace it. The shareholders, Henderson began, will be... Delighted to know that since I started spending Sundays in the park, our productivity is up. Employee retention has improved. We're making better decisions because I finally remembered what matters." She handed Henderson a different document. "This is my proposal for company-wide changes. Flexible schedules, family-friendly policies, a corporate culture that values whole people, not just their profit potential. And if we refuse?" another board member asked. "Then I take my controlling shares elsewhere. Starting a new company is easier than giving up a family." The word hung in the air. Family, not just blood and boardrooms, but chosen connections. Park benches and homework help and Sunday dinners with Mrs. Rodriguez. Henderson sputtered. "This is because of a dog." "No," Victoria said quietly. "This is because of love. The kind that makes you brave enough to change." She felt Jack's presence. Behind her, solid and supportive. Somewhere across the city, Sarah was probably teaching Max another trick, unaware that she'd helped teach Victoria the most important lesson of all. Sometimes keeping what matters means being willing to lose everything else. "So," Victoria addressed the board, her voice clear and confident, "shall we discuss the future of Chase Industries? The real future, where success and happiness aren't mutually exclusive." One by one, the board members sat down. Even Henderson, though his face suggested he'd eaten something sour. Victoria didn't need to look at Jack to know he was smiling. She'd chosen her legacy, and it had nothing to do with stock prices or corporate power. It had everything to do with a blue rubber, bone, a child's laughter, and the courage to let love change you. The small business loan application sat between them on Annie's counter after closing time, its blank spaces waiting to be filled with dreams. Jack stared at it, still trying to process Victoria's proposal. "You want to buy Annie's diner?" he repeated. "And make me manager." "Partner," Victoria corrected, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the paperwork. "Annie's retiring, and this place means something to all of us now. It's where everything started." Wei poked his head out from the kitchen where he was finishing cleanup. "Does this mean I finally get that new grill I've been asking for?" Victoria smiled. "Commercial grade, and we'll expand the kitchen like you wanted." After her showdown with the board, Victoria had emerged not just intact but stronger. Chase Industries was transforming under her new vision, but she'd also started looking for smaller investments, personal projects that reflected her changing priorities. "I don't know anything about owning a business," Jack admitted. "You know everything about running this place," Victoria countered. "About making people feel welcome, about building community. I'll handle the business side. You keep the heart of it beating." Sarah sat at their usual table, helping Max practice his newest trick, bringing napkins to customers. Her college fund savings jar, decorated with hand-drawn pictures, held pride of place beside the register. "And you're sure about this?" Jack asked Victoria. "It's not exactly a high-return investment." Victoria reached across the counter, covering his hand with hers. The gesture felt natural now, like so many things that had once seemed impossible. Not everything worth investing in shows up on a balance sheet. The bell above the door chimed, and Mrs. Rodriguez entered with a container of her famous empanadas, now a regular item on Annie's menu. "Ah, you're finally discussing the papers," she exclaimed. "I told Annie months ago you would be perfect to take over, a family business for a family." The word didn't make them flinch anymore. Somewhere between park Sundays and school science projects, between Max's shared custody schedule and impromptu dinners, they'd become exactly that. A family, unconventional, but undeniably real. Sarah looked up from her training session. "Does this mean we can bring Max to work sometimes?" "It means," Victoria said, "that we build something together, all of us." Jack picked up the pen, looking around at the diner that had been his anchor through so many hard years, the place where he'd served Victoria her first surprisingly good coffee, where Sarah had done homework between his shifts, where a community had rallied around them when the world tried to tell them their connection wasn't valid. One condition, he said. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Which is? We keep the prices reasonable. This place needs to stay accessible to everyone, not turn into some trendy spot. Already factored into the business plan, Victoria pulled out another document. Along with a college scholarship program for local kids, starting with Tommy Martinez, Sarah mentioned his basketball dreams. Jack shook his head, smiling. You really have changed. We all have. They spent the evening planning changes to the diner, Sarah contributing crayon drawings of her ideas, including a special corner for Max to greet customers. We listed kitchen equipment upgrades, while Mrs. Rodriguez debated menu additions. Through it all, Victoria took notes on her tablet, stopping occasionally to laugh at Max's antics or help Sarah with her math homework. The CEO was still there, in her precise organization and strategic thinking. But now those skills served a different purpose, building something that nourished more than just the bottom line. The loan applications slowly filled with their shared vision, a place where good food and genuine connections mattered more than profit margins, where a billionaire CEO could share coffee with maintenance workers, where a single dad could build a future, where a little girl could dream big while training her dog to bring joy to others. You know, Jack said as they finished the paperwork, when I found Max in that alley, I thought I was just saving a lost puppy. Victoria looked around the diner, their diner now, at the family that fate and a golden retriever had built. You saved more than that, she said softly. You saved me. Max, sensing the moment's importance, brought his blue bone and placed it between them. Some offerings, after all, matter more than business loans and bottom lines. The old family photo album lay open on Jack's kitchen table, its pages displaying a younger, happier Rachel. Sarah sat cross-legged in her chair, staring at images of a mother she barely remembered, while Max pressed his head against her leg, in silent support. She's back in the city, Jack said quietly to Victoria, who stood by the sink, gripping her coffee cup like a shield. Wants to see Sarah. The request had come via email, formal, distant, yet dropping into their lives like a stone into still water. Rachel's new life in Seattle had apparently lost its shine, and now she wanted to reconnect with the daughter she'd left behind. What did you tell her? Victoria asked, her voice carefully neutral. Nothing yet. Sarah should have a say. They watched as Sarah turned another page, showing a Christmas morning from years ago. Jack noticed Victoria's knuckles whitening around her cup. This was hitting closer to home than she wanted to admit. She wasn't there, Sarah said suddenly, still looking at the photos. When I won the science fair, when I started volunteering at the shelter, when we found Max, she looked up at Victoria. When we found you. Victoria set down her cup, moving to sit beside Sarah. She's still your mother, sweetheart. You have every right to want to see her. Do I want to? Sarah's voice was small. Everything's so good now. We have the diner and Max and you. What if she messes it all up? Jack joined them at the table, his heart aching at his daughter's fear. Nothing can mess this up, kiddo. Family isn't that fragile. Promise? Sarah looked between them, and Jack saw Victoria blink back tears. I had a mother like Rachel, Victoria said softly. One who left when things got hard. She came back once when the company started doing well. She reached for the album, touching a photo of Rachel. I refused to see her. Told myself I didn't need her anymore. Do you regret it? Sarah asked. Sometimes. Not because I needed her in my life, but because I never got to tell her how her leaving made me stronger. How I learned what real love looks like by seeing what it isn't. Jack watched the interplay between them, his daughter and the woman who had somehow become so much more than Max's other owner. Victoria had never spoken about her mother before, but here she was, opening old wounds to help Sarah navigate her own. Sarah hesitated. Could you both be there? When I see her? Of course, Jack started, but Victoria cut in gently. I think this needs to be just you and your dad first, sweetheart. Some conversations need to happen without complications. You're not a complication, Sarah protested. You're family. Victoria smiled, though her eyes were suspiciously bright. And family sometimes means knowing when to step back. But I'll be at the diner with Max, and we can have ice cream after. Okay? Sarah nodded slowly, then reached for Victoria's hand. Can we look at your old photos sometime? From when you were little? I don't have many, Victoria admitted. My father believed family photos were sentimental distractions. Then we'll make new ones, Sarah declared. Starting now. She pulled out her phone, scooting her chair between Jack and Victoria. Max, sensing activity, popped his head up onto the table. Sarah, Jack warned, but Victoria laughed. Let him stay. He's the reason we're all here, isn't he? The photo captured them perfectly. Sarah beaming between them, Max's golden head peeking up from below, Jack's quiet smile, and Victoria's unexpected joy. Not a replacement for the old photos in the album, but something new and real and chosen. Send that to me? Victoria asked softly. Already did, Sarah grinned. It's your new contact photo in my phone. See? She held it up, showing Victoria's name with their fresh family portrait beside it. Jack watched Victoria's expression shift as she saw how Sarah had listed her in the contacts. Victoria, Max's other mom. Some wounds, Jack realized, heal best when exposed to love. Rachel's return might stir up old pain, but they were stronger. Now, all of them. Strong enough to face the past without letting it threaten their future. Later, after Sarah went to bed, Victoria lingered at the door. Jack, thank you. For what? For showing me what real family looks like, even when it's complicated, especially when it's complicated. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. Through the apartment's thin walls, they could hear Sarah talking softly to Max, probably showing him more old photos, building bridges between past and present in her own way. Sometimes love is like that, Jack thought. It takes the broken pieces of multiple lives and creates something new, something stronger, something worth protecting, no matter what shadows the past might cast. The key felt heavy in Victoria's palm, not just any key, but one to Jack and Sarah's apartment. She stared at it over her morning coffee in the diner, the metal catching early sunlight through the windows. It's not a big deal, Jack had said when he gave it to her, trying to sound casual. For emergencies or if Max needs anything when we're not home, but they both knew it was more than that. It was trust, carved in metal and teeth. It was permission to enter their world completely, not just during scheduled visits or shared custody exchanges. You're overthinking this, Wei called from the kitchen, catching her expression. Since she'd become co-owner of the diner, he'd grown comfortable reading her moods. It's just a key. Nothing is just anything with them, Victoria replied, but she was smiling. The morning crowd began filtering in, regular customers who no longer did double takes at seeing Victoria Chase, CEO of Chase Industries, serving coffee in jeans and a diner apron. She'd insisted on learning every aspect of the business, much to Jack's amusement. Your shareholders would have a fit, he'd teased, watching her master the ancient cash register. My shareholders are seeing record profits since I started prioritizing people over procedures, she'd responded. Turns out happiness is good for business. Sarah burst in, school backpack bouncing, Max trotting faithfully beside her. Dads, running late? Parent-teacher conference? Can you help me with my history project? It's about family traditions. Victoria's hand closed around the key. Of course. Let me get Wei to cover the counter. They settled into their usual booth, Max curling up under the table. Sarah pulled out her notebook, covered in doodles of dogs and hearts. We're supposed to interview family members about their traditions and how they've changed over time, Sarah explained. I already got Dad's stories about Grandma's recipes, and Mrs. Rodriguez told me about celebrations in Puerto Rico, but she hesitated, and Victoria felt her heart squeeze. But what, sweetheart? Would it be okay if I interviewed you too? About your family? And maybe about our new traditions? Victoria thought about Sunday afternoons in the park, now expanded to include Wei and his kids. About Mrs. Rodriguez's cooking lessons, where Sarah learned empanadas, while Victoria mastered basic kitchen skills she'd never needed before. about Max's evening walks that often turned into ice cream runs or impromptu storytelling sessions. Our old traditions weren't really traditions, Victoria said slowly. They were obligations, charity galas, board meetings, corporate retreats. I used to spend Christmas going over quarterly reports. And now? Victoria smiled, remembering their first shared Christmas. How Jack had taught her to make hot chocolate from scratch, how Sarah had insisted she help with the paper chains, how Max had torn through his presents with infectious joy. Now I'm learning that traditions aren't about doing things perfectly. They're about being present, about creating moments that matter, Sarah scribbled in her notebook. Like our Friday movie nights? Exactly. Even when I have late meetings. I know that at 8 o'clock you and your dad and Max are piled on the couch waiting for me with popcorn and terrible action movies. They're not terrible, Sarah protested, but she was grinning. Dad says they're classics. Your father thinks Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It is! Jack's voice came from behind them. He slid into the booth, straightening his diner uniform. Parent-teacher conference went well, by the way. Mrs. Chen says Sarah's writing has improved dramatically. That's because Victoria helps me edit my essays, Sarah said. She knows all the big words. And your dad knows all the important ones, Victoria replied, catching Jack's eye. Words like family, trust, love. Max emerged from under the table, making his rounds between them, accepting pets and treats. His schedule had become more fluid, less about formal custody arrangements and more about being where he was needed most. Oh, Sarah reached into her backpack. I almost forgot. I made something for your office, Victoria. She pulled out a framed collage of photos, park days, diner moments, cooking disasters, movie nights. In the center was a shot of all of them. On the diner's opening day after the renovation, Max wearing a tiny bow tie. For when you have to be CEO, Victoria, Sarah explained. So you don't forget about Diner Victoria. Victoria touched the frame gently, seeing the key to Jack's apartment. In a new light, it wasn't just about access to their space. It was about being part of their story, their traditions, their love. I couldn't forget if I tried, she said softly, and I'll never want to try. Under the table, Jack's hand found hers, warm and sure. Max rested his head on Sarah's lap, ever the faithful guardian of their growing bonds. Outside, the city rushed by, but in their booth, time moved at the gentle pace of hearts, learning to trust completely. The community center plans spread across Annie's largest booth, covered in sticky notes and coffee stains. Victoria traced the outline of what would be the veterinary clinic, Sarah's suggestion, while Jack reviewed the proposed budget for the shelter expansion. Tommy Martinez's mom cried when she got the scholarship letter, Sarah reported, filling sugar dispensers during the afternoon lull. He's already looking at basketball camps for the summer. The Chase Reeves Community Foundation has a nice ring to it, Way called from the kitchen. Better than another corporate tax write-off. Victoria smiled, remembering the board's faces when she'd announced that Chase Industries would be matching all community donations. The same board members who'd once tried to end her relationship with Jack and Sarah now pointed to their innovative community engagement strategy as a model for corporate responsibility. The idea had started small, just a way to formalize the scholarship they'd created for Tommy, but like everything else in their lives, it had grown into something bigger, something that reflected the way their own family had transformed. Ms. Chase, a teenage girl approached their booth tentatively. I'm Jenny. I volunteer at the shelter with Sarah. Victoria looked up, setting aside her CEO persona. Just Victoria here. Sarah's told me about your work with the rescue dogs. That's actually why, well, Jenny twisted her hands nervously. My mom lost her job, and we can't afford to keep our apartment. The shelter said they'd take our dog if we can't find a place, but tell me about your mom, Victoria said, pulling out a chair. What kind of work does she do? An hour later, Jenny's mother had a job interview at Chase Industries, and Victoria had dispatched her real estate team to find pet-friendly, affordable housing options. You're getting soft, Jack teased after Jenny left, hope restored. I prefer to think of it as strategic investment in human capital, Victoria replied primly, but her eyes were warm. Sarah appeared with Max, back from their rounds visiting elderly customers who couldn't make it to the diner anymore. The delivery service had been her idea, a way to make sure their regulars didn't lose their connection to the community just because they couldn't walk the extra blocks. Mrs. Peterson says thank you for the soup, Sarah reported, and Mr. Cohen taught Max a new trick. Watch. Max dutifully demonstrated his ability to carry a small basket of cookies without eating them, a skill that would prove useful for their delivery service. The diner had become more than a business. Like their family, it had evolved into something that defied easy categorization. Part restaurant, part community center, part proving ground for the idea that success could be measured in more than dollars and cents. The local paper's headline said it best: Chase Reeves' initiative redefines community banking. The article detailed how their foundation was helping small businesses, funding education, and supporting families in crisis. But it was the accompanying photo that told the real story. Victoria in her diner apron, Jack manning the register, Sarah doing homework with other kids in the corner, and Max making his rounds with his cookie basket. You know what this means. We gestured to the plans for the community center. You're stuck with us now. No going back to being just a CEO. Victoria looked around the diner, at the regulars who'd become family, at the wall of photos showing their growing community, at the way Sarah moved confidently between tables like she was born to help others. Going back was never an option, she said. Not since a certain puppy decided to play matchmaker. Max, hearing himself mentioned, brought his basket over, offering them fresh-baked cookies. Each small act of sharing, of caring, rippled outward, creating connections that strengthened their entire community. Through the window, they could see Jenny and her mother leaving the real estate office across the street, both smiling. Another family that would get to stay together, keep their pet, find their footing. Sometimes, Jack said, watching Victoria, make notes on the community center plans. The best business decisions are the ones that come from the heart. Sarah looked up from her homework. Is that why the shelter expansion has a max wing? Actually, Victoria grinned, that was purely strategic. Your father insisted we needed a mascot for the foundation. Who better than our original success story? Max wagged his tail, somehow knowing they were talking about him. He'd gone from lost puppy to beloved pet to community ambassador, his journey, mirroring their own transformation from strangers to family to something even bigger. The community center plans weren't just blueprints for a building. They were a map of possibilities, a testament to what could happen when people chose love over convention, community over competition, hope over fear. Next week's board meeting should be interesting, Victoria mused. I'm proposing we expand the initiative citywide. Letting other communities find their own way to connect? Jack asked. More like showing them it's possible to build something real, something that lasts. Sarah added another sticky note to the plans. Don't forget the dog park. Some legacies, after all, are measured not in profits but in wagging tails and helping hands, in communities strengthened and lives transformed. Sarah's drawing captured them perfectly. Jack, Victoria and herself, sitting on their favorite park bench, Max at their feet, surrounded by hearts and flowers. At the bottom, in her best handwriting, she'd written, My family, finally. Official. The drawings sat propped against the napkin holder at their usual booth in Annie's, waiting for Victoria's arrival. Jack touched it nervously, remembering Sarah's excitement when he'd shared his plans. It's about time, Dad, she'd said, rolling her eyes in that preteen way she'd perfected. We've been a family forever. Now we just need to make it real. Max seemed to sense the importance of the moment, sitting unusually still beside Sarah instead of making his usual rounds through the diner. We had closed the kitchen early, and Mrs. Rodriguez had shooed away the last lingering customers. Everything was ready. Stop fidgeting, Sarah whispered. "She'll be here any minute." Jack straightened his tie, not the clip-on from his security guard days, but a real one Victoria had given him for his birthday. Maybe this is too much. Maybe... The bell above the door chimed. Victoria entered, still in her CEO outfit from a board meeting, but she'd already shed her heels somewhere between the office and the diner. These days, she kept running shoes in her car for what she called real-life moments. "Sorry I'm late," she began, then stopped, taking in the scene. The diner was lit only by candles, their booth set with the fancy plates they usually saved for special occasions. Sarah was wearing her best dress, and Max had a bow tie clipped to his collar. "What's all this?" Victoria asked softly. Sarah jumped up, unable to contain herself. "Dad has something to ask you." "Sarah," Jack groaned, but he was smiling. Trust his daughter to cut right to the chase. Victoria slid into the booth, her expression a mix of confusion and growing understanding. "Jack," he took a deep breath, reaching for the drawing Sarah had made. "Do you remember the first time you came in here? Black coffee, egg white omelette? Barely looked up from your phone. And you told me some things can't be faked with expensive packaging," Victoria finished. "I thought you were rather presumptuous." "I was terrified," Jack admitted. "Victoria Chase in my diner. But then you smiled, really smiled, and I saw something behind the CEO mask." Sarah bounced in her seat. "And then I came in with Max." "And then you came in with Max," Jack agreed, "and everything changed." Victoria reached across the table, taking his hand. "Everything got better. That's what I wanted to talk about." Jack pulled a small box from his pocket. "We've done everything backwards, haven't we? Shared custody before dating, family before romance, love before all the usual steps. When has our family ever been usual?" Victoria's voice wavered slightly. "Never. And I don't want it to be." Jack opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "I want it to be extraordinary, unexpected, and completely ours. Just like you." Sarah held her breath. Max's tail thumped against the floor. Through the window, they could see Way, Mrs. Rodriguez, and a small crowd of regular customers trying and failing to be subtle about watching. "Victoria Chase," Jack said. "Will you marry me? Not because we need to make anything official, but because I want to spend the rest of my life building this beautiful, unconventional family with you." Victoria looked at the ring, at Sarah's drawing, at Max's hopeful expression, at the community gathered outside, all the pieces of a life she'd never known she wanted until a lost puppy showed her the way. "On one condition," she said, making Sarah gasp. "Anything." Victoria picked up Sarah's drawing. "We use this for the wedding invitations, because this is who we are, a family drawn together by love, hope, and a very clever dog." "Is that a yes?" Sarah burst out. Victoria laughed, tears sparkling in her eyes. "That's a yes. The easiest yes I've ever said." The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Sarah launched herself into their booth for a group hug, and Max barked joyfully, setting off a chorus of cheers from their not-so-subtle audience outside. "We're real now," Sarah whispered. "Official." Victoria pulled her close. "Sweetheart, we were always real. Some families are born, some are made, and some, the very lucky ones, are brought together by golden retrievers with excellent taste in humans." Through the window, their community celebrated. Inside, a family that had started with a lost puppy and a cup of coffee held each other close, proving that love doesn't need convention to be true. It just needs hearts brave enough to follow where hope leads. The wedding album rested open on Annie's counter, Max's image prominent on every page. As ring-bearer, he'd performed his duties perfectly, carrying a small basket with the rings tied securely to his blue rubber bone, the same one he'd played with on that first day in the park. "My favorite is still this one," Sarah said, pointing to a candid shot. Victoria in a cream silk suit, Jack in his first custom-made tuxedo, both of them laughing as Max decided the middle of their vows was the perfect time for a belly rub. "One," Year had passed since that day, and the photo album had become something of a community treasure. Customers loved flipping through it while waiting for their orders, watching the story of an unlikely family unfold through images. There they all were, Mrs. Rodriguez crying happy tears, Way presenting a spectacular wedding cake, Tommy Martinez and his mother catching the bouquet together. The Chase Reeves Community Center staff had turned out in force, along with shelter, volunteers, diner regulars, and even a few bemused board members. Remember Henderson's face when Max licked his hand during the reception? Victoria smiled, straightening her diner apron. These days, she split her time between CEO duties and what she called real work at Annie's. I think that was the moment he finally understood, Jack said, refilling coffee cups. Some things matter more than corporate protocol. The diner had evolved with them. The renovation had kept its cozy charm while adding modern touches, including a special corner where Max held court with his growing collection of community dogs. The scholarship wall displayed dozens of success stories now, led by Tommy Martinez's full ride to basketball camp. Sarah, 13 and growing wise, had turned their story into an award-winning school essay, How a Lost Puppy Built a Community. The local paper had reprinted it, leading to interviews about the Chase Reeves initiative's impact on the city. "Mom!" Sarah called from the kitchen, the word still new enough to make Victoria's eyes light up every time. "Can you help me with this calculus? Way's trying, but he keeps getting distracted by the new soup recipe." "Coming, sweetheart." Victoria paused to kiss Jack's cheek, casual affection that had become as natural as breathing. "Don't let Max steal any more bacon while I'm gone." "No promises," Jack grinned, watching Max's ears perk up at the word bacon. The morning sun streamed through windows that now bore the Chase Reeves Diner logo, a simple design featuring a golden retriever with a coffee cup. Outside, the community center bustled with activity. Inside, their family continued growing in unexpected ways. Jenny, whose mother now managed affordable housing for the foundation, had joined their weekend staff. Tommy helped with deliveries between basketball practices. Even Rachel, who'd eventually found her way back into Sarah's life as a cautious friend rather than an absent mother, volunteered at the shelter sometimes. "Hey!" Way called from the kitchen. "Channel 7's doing a story on the expansion project. They want to interview the whole family." Victoria emerged from helping Sarah, calculator in hand. "Tell them yes, but only if Max can be there," everyone finished in unison, laughing. The puppy who'd once been lost in an alley had become the symbol of their success. Proof that love could bridge any gap, heal any wound, build any dream. His photo hung in every Chase Industries office, reminding employees that profit and purpose could coexist. Jack watched his family, all of them, blood and chosen and community, move through their morning routines. Sarah explaining algorithms to Way while he taste-tested soup. Victoria switching seamlessly between CEO calls and coffee orders. Max making his rounds, bringing joy and comfort to anyone who needed it. "You know what I just realized?" he said to Victoria when she returned to the counter. "That first morning you came in here. You never did finish your egg white omelette." Victoria smiled, that real smile that still made his heart skip. "I found something better to fill me up." Through the windows, they could see their city waking up, a city changed by the simple belief that love deserves a chance, that family can look like anything, that hope sometimes comes with 4 paws and a wagging tail. Max brought his blue bone to Victoria, the same request he'd made that first day in the park. She threw it gently, watching him retrieve it with the same joy he'd shown a year ago, 2 years ago, forever ago. "Some things never change," Sarah observed, closing the wedding album. "And some things change everything," Jack replied, taking Victoria's hand. Outside, the morning crowd began filtering in, drawn by good food and better company, by the promise that here, in this place, everyone belonged. Inside, a family that had started with a lost puppy and a cup of coffee continued writing their story, one day, one heart, one community at a time. Max settled into his corner, surrounded by the love he'd helped create. Proof that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on a rainy night, from opening your heart when hope appears, from believing that family isn't about where you start, but where you choose to belong. The end.